Hello and welcome. Tonight we begin a journey into a question that is as quiet as it is profound. When we look at the long story of Earth, with its endless cycles of growth and collapse, we may begin to wonder, what if this planet itself is not only a home, but a kind of test? A place where survival, adaptation, and awareness are measured in ways so subtle we often overlook them. Tests, after all, are not always written down or announced in advance. Sometimes they are simply conditions to be met. Can we endure heat, cold, hunger, or darkness? Can we learn to live with fire, with storms, with the uncertainty of a changing sky? Can we adjust when rivers flood, when mountains shift, when forests burn? These questions have been asked not only of humans, but of every species that has ever lived here. Most did not pass, most vanished, a few adapted, survived, and continued the story of life. To think of Earth this way is not to suggest design or judgment. It is to notice a pattern. The surface of this world has always been a proving ground. From the earliest microbes that found a way to harvest light to the mammals that emerged after the dinosaurs fell, existence here has always been tested. Sometimes the exam lasts only a few years, as in the case of a drought or a disease. Sometimes it lasts millions, unfolding through slow changes of climate and geography. But the result is always the same. Those who adapt endure. Those who do not are replaced. In this sense, Earth has been a teacher with strict rules. The lessons come not in words but in pressures, extinctions, and opportunities. Each era of life was forced to find solutions. The test of the Great Oxygenation Event, when the air itself shifted from toxic to breathable, ended most forms of early life, but made possible all that followed. The test of the asteroid impacts 66 million years ago ended the age of giant reptiles, but opened the way for mammals. The test of ice ages forced human ancestors to migrate, to clothe themselves, to build fire, and to remember. Each time, survival depended on learning quickly enough. When we frame Earth in this way, the story becomes not just one of geology and biology, but of challenge and response. Mountains rose, oceans shifted, climates warmed and cooled. Each shift was a question. Could life respond? Could it reorganize? Could it try something new? The history of Earth is not only a history of being, it is a history of answering. As we sit together tonight, think of the vastness of time. 4.5 billion years have passed since this planet formed. In that span, life has been tested countless times, and not in an abstract sense. Tested in the most direct way possible: survive or vanish, continue or end. The rock layers beneath our feet are full of the results. Fossils of those who did not pass, landscapes reshaped by those who did. It is a history written not in words but in stone, bone, and silence. For us, living in the present, the idea that Earth might be a test takes on another dimension. It is not only survival that is questioned, but awareness. Can we see the fragility of what supports us? Can we notice the balance between air, water, soil, and life? Can we choose to live in a way that does not ruin the very conditions that sustain us? These are questions as urgent as any drought or storm. They are tests not only of biology, but of understanding. Before we continue further into this story, I would love to know where you are listening from tonight, and what time it is for you. It is a small thing, but also part of the wonder. We are joined across distances, across hours of the clock, and yet we are sharing this single moment of reflection. If you find yourself curious about these long, slow questions of Earth, I would be grateful if you tapped like or subscribed, not for me alone, but because it helps this quiet journey find others who might need it. And now, let us go deeper. Think of the earliest animals, long before humans, long before even the great dinosaurs. Small, soft-bodied creatures in the seas of the Cambrian period. Their test was movement, defense, the ability to find food without being eaten. Some grew shells, some grew eyes, some learned to burrow beneath the sand. Those who passed multiplied, spreading into countless forms. Those who failed left only faint impressions in stone. This was not chance alone. It was trial. It was error. It was adaptation measured by the conditions of the time. Much later, when mammals first appeared, the test was patience. For tens of millions of years, they lived in the shadow of dominant reptiles. Small, furtive, surviving mostly at night. The world did not yet belong to them. And yet, when the test came in the form of an asteroid strike, they were ready. Their small size, their adaptability, their ability to eat varied foods all became advantages. When the dinosaurs failed, the mammals passed. The test was not about power, but about readiness, flexibility, and the quiet entrance of obscurity. Humans, too, have faced such trials. To walk upright was itself a test of balance and bone. To leave the forests of Africa for the open savanna was a test of courage and cooperation. Fire was a test of curiosity and danger. Language was a test of memory and trust. Agriculture was a test of patience and planning. Each step was not inevitable. Each could have failed, yet enough succeeded that the story continued. Now, as we reflect, we see Earth not as hostile and not as exacting. It does not give answers freely. It poses challenges and it waits. The ice advances, the river shifts, the volcano erupts. Species are tested, again and again, by circumstance. And each test shapes the survivors in ways they cannot foresee. We are the result of countless such trials written into our bones, our minds, and our cultures. Some tests are sudden, dramatic, unforgettable. Others are slow, creeping, unnoticed until it is almost too late. A warming climate, a thinning soil, a vanishing species. These are tests that do not announce themselves with fire from the sky, but with small changes accumulating year by year. Whether we notice, whether we adapt, whether we respond wisely, these are the questions being asked of us now. To think of Earth as a test is not to despair. It is to notice that survival and meaning have always depended on response. Every tree, every bird, every grain of soil exists because of ancestors who passed trials we cannot imagine. The fact that we sit here tonight, reflecting together, is itself proof that life can endure, adapt, and learn. The story is not over. The exam continues. So let us begin our exploration of Earth as a test. We will move slowly, carefully, into the layers of history. We will look at the extinctions and the survivals, the collapses and the renewals. We will notice how challenges shape species, how questions shape cultures, how the planet itself, without speaking a word, has always been asking. The question is not whether Earth is a test. The question is how we choose to answer. Let us notice how oceans, skies, rocks, and air work together in patterns that are both intricate and resilient. Life emerges within these conditions, but never without struggle. To think of Earth as a test is to remember that no part of it has been simple. Every element carries within it both a gift and a challenge. Water nourishes, but it also drowns. Fire warms, but it also consumes. The sun brings life, yet burns and dries when it grows too strong. The very soil that feeds us can turn barren when used without care. Each is both blessing and trial, a lesson given without words. The earliest tests life faced were quiet ones. They did not arrive with fire or thunder, but unfolded over long expanses of time. Imagine the seas of 3 billion years ago. The water was heavy with minerals, the air almost absent of oxygen. Early organisms, small, simple, barely more than arrangements of molecules, had discovered a way to draw energy from sunlight. They released oxygen as waste. To us, oxygen is life. To them, it was poison. What followed is known as the Great Oxygenation Event. For millions of years, oxygen slowly filled the atmosphere. For those tiny organisms, it was a catastrophe. Countless species suffocated. The chemistry of oceans shifted. Minerals rusted into stone. Entire ecosystems collapsed. And yet, within that upheaval, new possibilities emerged. Life forms that could tolerate oxygen and eventually thrive in it passed the test. The air we breathe now is a direct outcome of that trial. Notice the pattern. What seems like destruction is also creation. What appears as an ending is also a beginning. A test is rarely simple. It closes one door even as it opens another. For every extinction event in Earth's history, the survivors reshaped the future. They carried forward new skills, new traits, new ways of being. It was not always the strongest who survived. More often, it was those who were flexible, those who could adapt. Passing the test meant finding a way to live within new rules. Consider the Ordovician extinction, nearly 450 million years ago. The seas were rich with trilobites, brachiopods, and corals. Then the climate shifted. A massive ice age froze much of the planet. Sea levels dropped, ecosystems collapsed, and most species vanished. But not all. Those who endured adapted to colder waters, shifting coastlines, and new ways of feeding. They carried forward into the next era, shaping the marine life we know today. The Devonian period brought another test. Life was expanding onto land. Plants grew tall, forests spread. Early amphibians began to walk along riverbanks, but as roots broke into the soil, they altered the chemistry of rivers and seas. Nutrients washed into the water, fueling massive blooms of algae. When those blooms died, oxygen levels crashed, suffocating life in the seas. It was a slow disaster, stretching across millions of years. Again, many species failed. Yet those who adapted, fish with stronger lungs, plants with deeper roots, prepared the way for the age to come. Each extinction was a question. Could life meet the new conditions? Could it endure when the rules of the world changed? Most often, the answer was no. The fossil record is a library of failures. And yet, it is also a record of endurance. Every time the planet shifted, some life found a way. Those survivors carried not only their own lives forward, but the memory of the trial within their genes. Perhaps the most famous test came at the end of the Cretaceous period, when an asteroid struck Earth 66 million years ago. The impact threw dust and fire into the sky. Sunlight dimmed, plants withered. Dinosaurs, long the rulers of Earth, could not endure the sudden famine. Their age ended, but small mammals, birds, and other adaptable creatures survived. The test was swift, brutal, and decisive, yet without it, we would not be here. The rise of mammals, and eventually humans, was possible only because others failed. To see Earth as a test is not to imagine cruelty. It is to recognize a law of constant change. Stability is rare. Challenge is the rule. Sometimes the trial comes from within, as when microbes change the atmosphere. Sometimes it comes from without, as with asteroids or volcanoes. But always, the response determines what comes next. Passing does not mean perfection. It means endurance, flexibility, a willingness to change. Even humans have inherited these lessons. Our ancestors lived through ice ages, droughts, and migrations. They endured scarcity and storm. They learned to move, to innovate, to share knowledge. Every tool, every fire, every story was a way of passing the test. Survival was not only physical, but cultural. We learned not only to eat and drink, but to remember and teach. Each generation carried forward what it had learned, so that the next would not begin from nothing. Yet if we look closely, we see that the test is never over. The climate shifts still, forests burn, species vanish. We are asked not only if we can endure, but if we can endure wisely. Can we live in a way that does not exhaust the soil, poison the water, or darken the air? Can we recognize that the conditions we enjoy are rare and fragile? The test of our time may not be survival alone, but stewardship. Not just endurance, but responsibility. And perhaps this is the deeper pattern. Each test becomes more complex. Early life was asked only to breathe. Later, species were asked to move, to hunt, to adapt to new climates. Humans are asked not only to endure but to reflect. We can see the consequences of our actions. We can imagine the future. We can choose to act with foresight or with disregard. This awareness is itself part of the trial. The question is not only can we survive, the question is what kind of survival we seek. So let us walk deeper into this history. In the next chapters, we will look closely at the ways Earth has tested life. We will notice not only what was lost, but what was gained. We will move through ice ages and firestorms, through collapses and recoveries. And always, we will carry the question quietly with us. If Earth is a test, what is being asked of us now? The story of Earth is written not only in stone and fire, but also in ice. If we think of our planet as a place of constant examination, the ice ages are among the most demanding trials life has ever faced. Ice does not roar like a volcano or strike like an asteroid. It advances slowly, quietly, almost invisibly at first. Yet when it comes, it reshapes the land, the seas, and every living thing that must endure its chill. The first ice ages occurred long before humans. More than 2 billion years ago, the planet may have been almost entirely covered in ice. Scientists call it Snowball Earth. Imagine seas sealed beneath frozen lids, continents buried beneath white silence, the sun reflecting off endless sheets of cold. How could life endure such conditions? It seems impossible. And yet the evidence tells us it happened not once, but several times. Life survived by retreating to places where warmth still lingered. Volcanic vents deep in the oceans, thin cracks of open water at the equator, small refuges where liquid water remained. These pockets became sanctuaries. Within them, life held on. The lesson was not strength but persistence. Even in the harshest test, survival was possible by clinging to the few spaces that still offered hope. Later, in the more recent past, Earth entered cycles of glaciation. Over the last 2 million years, ice sheets have advanced and retreated across the northern continents more than 20 times. Each cycle lasted tens of thousands of years. Forests were crushed, rivers shifted. Entire landscapes vanished beneath miles of frozen weight. For humans and their ancestors, these ice ages were constant companions. To live meant to move, to adapt, to learn the patterns of ice and thaw. The ice was not only a destroyer, it was also a sculptor. As glaciers advanced, they carved valleys, ground down mountains, and spread soil across plains. When they melted, they left behind rivers and lakes, reshaped coastlines, and fertile ground. The test was harsh, but its results were also gifts. The landscapes many of us know today, rolling hills, wide river basins, deep fjords, are the work of ice. It stripped and it renewed. It tested and it provided. For early humans, the ice ages demanded creativity. Fire was not optional, but necessary. Clothing made from hides, shelters built from stone, of bone, communities formed around shared survival, all answers to the cold. The harshness of the test pushed humans to invent, to imagine, to cooperate. It was in this crucible that art appeared. In caves lit by firelight, humans painted animals, carved figures, and left symbols. Even in struggle, they made meaning. Passing the test was not only about food and warmth, but about spirit. The ability to create beauty and memory in the face of hardship was itself a form of endurance. Think of the migrations that ice demanded. When glaciers grew, humans moved south. When they retreated, humans followed the animals back north. Over thousands of years, this movement spread our ancestors across continents. Each migration was an exam with no clear map, only the challenge of unknown lands. Some groups failed, their traces vanishing into silence. Others survived, carrying forward stories, tools, and skills that would guide future generations. The ice ages also tested other species. Mammoths grew thick coats and massive bodies to withstand the cold. Saber-toothed cats hunted across frozen plains. Giant ground sloths roamed the Americas. Many of these creatures thrived for thousands of years. But when the climate warmed and human hunters spread, they could not endure the change. Once again, survival was not permanent. The rules shifted, and the exam began again. The ice did not test individuals alone, but entire ecosystems. Forests gave way to tundra. Grasslands spread where once there had been trees. Animals followed the plants, and predators followed the prey. Every shift was a question. Could a species adjust? Could it find food in new places? Could it migrate quickly enough? Those who could adapt moved forward into the next chapter. Those who could not became part of the fossil record, silent reminders of the course of change. In seeing Earth as a test, the Ice Ages reveal something profound. The exam was not only about surviving cold, but about surviving change. Ice came and went, seas rose and fell, landscapes transformed. The challenge was never to master one set of conditions, but to accept that conditions would never be fixed. Success meant flexibility. It meant knowing when to hold on and when to let go. Even now, we live in the shadow of these tests. The last great ice sheet began to retreat about 20,000 years ago. As it melted, humans spread into new lands, rivers filled, and fertile soils were left behind. Agriculture became possible. Villages became towns. Towns became cities. In a sense, our entire civilization is built on the ground revealed by melting ice. Without the retreat of glaciers, the plains of Europe, Asia, and the Americas would not be what they are. The abundance we depend on is the direct outcome of ancient trials, but the test is not finished. The ice that remains, locked in Greenland and Antarctica, continues to hold questions for us. As the climate warms, these ice sheets melt. Seas rise, coastlines shift. Once again, we face the challenge of change. The difference now is that we are aware of it. Unlike our ancestors, we can measure the ice, predict its retreat, and imagine the consequences. This awareness is a test of a new kind. It asks not only can we endure, but can we act with foresight? Perhaps this is the deeper lesson of ice. It reminds us that nothing is permanent. Even the most solid seeming landscapes are temporary. Valleys are carved, mountains erode, lakes dry or form anew. To live on Earth is to be tested not once, but always. The rules change, the conditions shift. The only constant is the exam itself. So let us carry this forward. The Ice Ages are one chapter in a much larger story. In the next part, we will turn to fire, to the volcanoes and eruptions that have tested life with sudden force. Where ice asks patience, fire asks resilience to shock. Both are part of the same long curriculum. Earth is a teacher that does not grade on comfort. It grades on endurance, creativity, and the quiet strength to begin again after loss. Where ice moves slowly and asks for patience, fire arrives suddenly and asks for resilience. In Earth's long history of examinations, fire has been one of the fiercest and most unforgettable instructors. Its lessons are delivered not in whispers but in roars. Entire landscapes can be reshaped in moments. Species that thrived one season may be erased in the next. To live with fire is to understand that the ground beneath us is never entirely stable. Consider a volcano. Beneath the crust, molten rock presses upward. It waits in silence, sometimes for centuries. Then pressure builds, and the earth releases it in an eruption. The test begins. Ash fills the sky, darkening the sun. Rivers of lava spill down slopes. Forests ignite. Communities, whether human or animal, are scattered or destroyed. It is a moment that strips away comfort and demands immediate response. There is no time to prepare, only to endure or to flee. The fossil record preserves stories of such trials. Entire regions once lush with life have been buried in ash. The Deccan Traps in India, vast layers of volcanic rock, were formed by eruptions that lasted 4,000 years. These eruptions poured lava across land the size of continents and released gases that altered the climate. Some scientists believe they played a role in the extinction of the dinosaurs. If so, the exam was twofold. An asteroid struck and volcanoes erupted, each magnifying the other's devastation. Another chapter comes from Siberia, where immense eruptions about 250 million years ago unleashed what may have been the most severe test life has ever faced. The event is called the Great Dying. Nearly 90% of species vanished. Oceans grew acidic, skies filled with toxic gases, and temperatures soared. It was as though the examiners had raised the difficulty beyond anything life had encountered before. And yet, life did not end. A sliver of survivors carried forward into the Triassic, setting the stage for new species, including the first dinosaurs. Notice again the pattern. Fire destroys, but it also prepares. The soils left behind by lava are often among the most fertile on Earth. Regions once buried in ash become rich with life after centuries or millennia. Forests regrow, animals return, and ecosystems renew. Fire's test is not permanent destruction, but transformation. Those who endure the immediate devastation eventually find themselves in landscapes reshaped, often with new opportunities. Humans, too, have faced the tests of fire. Ancient communities built their homes near volcanoes for the fertile soils, accepting the risk of eruption in exchange for abundance. The people of Pompeii, living in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius, knew the ground was rich in the climate kind. When the eruption came, it was sudden and final. Yet even in their tragedy, we learn. The preserved ruins remind us of the delicate balance between benefit and danger, abundance and loss. But fire is not only volcanic. Lightning strikes forests, grasslands ignite. In these natural wildfires, ecosystems face recurring exams. At first glance, fire seems purely destructive. Trees fall, animals flee, smoke fills the sky. Yet many ecosystems are adapted to this test. Some trees release seeds only in the heat of fire. Grasses regrow quickly after flames pass. Animals learn to move with the cycles of burn and regrowth. Fire clears away the old and allows the new to rise. In this sense, the test is one of renewal. Passing it means not only surviving the flames, but thriving in their aftermath. Even within human culture, fire has been both danger and gift. Early humans learned to tend flames, to carry embers, to use fire for warmth, cooking, and protection. Mastery of fire was one of our greatest examinations. It demanded care, patience, and responsibility. Unchecked, fire destroys; guided, it sustains. It is the perfect example of Earth's dual lessons. The very thing that threatens us can also nurture us, depending on how we respond. When we see fire in this way, it becomes less an enemy and more a teacher. It shows us impermanence, the fragility of structures, and the necessity of resilience. After every eruption, after every wildfire, life returns. The test is not whether destruction will come, but how we rise after it passes. To live on Earth is to know that fire may arrive without warning, yet to trust that renewal follows. The deeper lesson may be this: fire asks us to hold lightly to what we think is permanent. A city, a forest, a mountain can vanish in an instant. But from the ashes, new beginnings emerge. Passing the test is not clinging to what was, but adapting to what comes next. It is learning to see destruction and creation not as opposites, but as two sides of the same cycle. So as we walk through the curriculum of Earth's trials, we have seen patience demanded by ice and resilience demanded by fire. Each element presents its own questions, each demands its own answers, and each has left its mark on the history of life. The exams are not gentle, yet without them, the story of Earth would be flat, unshaped, and silent. The tests are what carve valleys, build mountains, and write the long script of survival. In the next part, we will turn from ice and fire to water, not as a gentle stream, but as a force of flood and depth. Oceans rise, rivers carve, rains wash, and floods sweep. Water has its own examinations, asking life to float, to swim, to move, or to perish. Where fire is sudden and ice is slow, water moves with rhythms that are both. To see Earth as a test is to see that every element participates in the same great instruction, each with questions written in a different script. If we imagine Earth as a place of constant examination, then water is perhaps the examiner that never rests. It is everywhere, always shifting, always testing. Where ice teaches patience and fire teaches resilience, water teaches persistence, flexibility, and humility. It moves in cycles that are endless yet never identical. Every creature that has ever lived has been shaped by its presence, and every failure to adapt to its rhythms has carried the same result: extinction. Water's tests begin at the smallest scale. For the first life, water was everything. The earliest organisms floated in seas, relying on currents to carry nutrients and energy. To survive, they learned to anchor, to swim, to cling, or to drift with intention. Those who could not manage these quiet examinations were swept away, invisible even in the fossil record. The survivors carried forward, slowly writing into their genes the lessons of endurance in liquid. As life grew more complex, water's challenges grew with it. Oxygen levels rose and fell within oceans, temperatures shifted, currents changed. Each shift altered the availability of food and the habitability of environments. Fish that could gulp air at the surface during stagnant times passed the test. Amphibians that crawled onto land found new possibilities, but also new difficulties. Every riverbank, every tide pool, every estuary was both a threat and an opportunity. Consider floods. Rivers give life to valleys, but they also rise beyond their banks. Ancient humans learned this with clarity. The Nile, the Tigris, the Euphrates civilizations grew because of their floods. Silt was deposited, crops were nourished, cities thrived. But when the waters rose too high or failed to rise at all, famine and collapse followed. The exam was not optional. Year after year, people watched the waters, predicted their timing, and adapted their lives to their cycles. Passing the test was never guaranteed. The oceans present a more formidable challenge. For much of Earth's history, sea levels have risen and fallen dramatically. When glaciers locked water into ice, seas shrank, coastlines expanded, and shallow habitats vanished. When ice melted, seas returned, drowning forests, plains, and even entire land bridges. Each cycle was an exam for those living near the margins. Some species followed the retreating shores. Others adapted to the deep. Many were simply erased. Even in calmer times, oceans demand endurance. Their currents stretch across the planet, redistributing heat, nutrients, and life. A shift in current patterns can alter entire ecosystems. Coral reefs thrive when conditions are stable, but bleach and die when water's warm. Fish populations collapse when currents fail to bring food. The exam is an ending, and it does not grade on fairness. A reef that flourished for thousands of years can vanish within decades. Storms are water's more dramatic tests. Hurricanes, typhoons, monsoons all strike with power that reshapes coastlines and floods lands. Entire communities have been destroyed by single storms. Yet storms also redistribute energy, stirring the seas and replenishing rainfall. Their tests are destructive, but they are also part of the larger balance. Life endures not by resisting storms, but by recovering after them, by learning to bend, rebuild, and move forward. Water also tests through drought. Where there is no rain, plants wither, animals migrate, and people suffer. Entire civilizations have risen and fallen depending on rainfall. The ancient Maya, for example, endured centuries of prosperity in the forests of Central America. But when drought arrived and persisted, their cities declined. It was not warfare alone or politics alone, but the absence of rain that tested them beyond endurance. The exam was silent, spread across years, but decisive all the same. Even underground, water examines. Aquifers fill slowly, storing centuries of rain. They feed rivers, wells, and springs, but when overused, they vanish. Farmers who draw too deeply may pass the test for a generation, but leave failure for the next. The exam is intergenerational. It asks not only what we need now, but what will remain for those who follow. Passing requires foresight, something humanity often struggles to maintain. On longer time scales, water has tested life with entire oceans. About 200 million years ago, Earth's continents were gathered into a single landmass called Pangaea. One vast ocean surrounded it. Currents moved differently, climates shifted, and ecosystems had to adjust. Later, when continents broke apart, new seas formed, new currents developed, and the exam changed yet again. Life was forced to migrate, diversify, and evolve. Water's greatest tests, however, may be hidden in its extremes. Deep in the ocean trenches, far below where light can reach, creatures live in conditions that seem unlivable. Pressures are immense, temperatures are near freezing, food is scarce. Yet life endures, creating glowing bodies, slow metabolisms, and symbiotic relationships with bacteria. These creatures remind us that tests are not always about abundance. Sometimes the exam is about finding ways to endure within scarcity. At the other extreme, near hydrothermal vents, water meets fire. Here, scalding temperatures and chemical-rich plumes create environments that should be hostile, yet they teem with life forms, clams, and bacteria that thrive on chemistry rather than sunlight. This is a test of adaptability beyond imagination, and yet it is passed with elegance. The examiners of Earth never rest, and life never ceases to find responses. When we step back, the lessons of water become clear. It asks for flexibility. It demands balance. It teaches that abundance and scarcity are two sides of the same cycle. Floods and droughts, storms and calms, seas rising and falling all remind us that nothing is guaranteed. Survival means moving with the rhythms rather than against them. Those who pass the test of water are not those who resist its changes, but those who learn to flow with them. For humans today, water continues to be our greatest examination. We drink it, grow with it, travel upon it. Yet we also pollute it, divert it, and exhaust it. We are tested not only by its absence, but by our own actions. Can we share it wisely? Can we preserve aquifers? Can we keep rivers alive for generations yet to come? The exam is both practical and ethical. It asks whether we can live as part of the cycle rather than as its disruptors. Perhaps the deepest lesson of water is humility. No matter how advanced our civilizations become, we remain dependent on rain, rivers, and seas. Technology may help us cope, but it cannot replace the cycles themselves. Every glass of water we drink is ancient. It has been here for billions of years, passing through clouds, stones, plants, and bodies. To see water as an examiner is to realize that the same drops that nourish the first life still nourish us. We are participants in a test that began long before us and will continue long after. So far, we have walked through the trials of ice, fire, and water. Each asks different questions, each measures different qualities of life. Together they shape the history of Earth, but the exam is not finished. In the next part, we will look upward to the air itself. The atmosphere is often unseen, yet it carries its own challenges. Storms, winds, climates, and invisible gases, all of these are part of the curriculum. If Earth is a test, the air is one of its most subtle yet relentless examiners. Air surrounds us so completely that we rarely notice it. It moves silently around us, filling our lungs, carrying scents, shaping weather, and feeding fire. It is the unseen ocean in which we swim every moment of our lives. Yet if we think of Earth as a test, then air is one of the most persistent and subtle examiners. It asks not only that life breathe, but that it endure constant shifts in climate, pressure, and chemistry. Its questions are invisible, but their consequences are profound. The earliest challenges of air came long before humans. When oxygen first filled the atmosphere more than 2 billion years ago, it was not a gift, but a catastrophe. Many forms of life perished, unable to adapt to the new gas. Those that survived invented defenses enzymes to detoxify oxygen, ways to use it for energy. Passing the test of air meant reimagining life itself. What was once poison became the very fuel of vitality. As the atmosphere thickened with oxygen, new trials emerged. Fire became possible, and with it, both destruction and opportunity. The ozone layer formed, shielding the surface from harmful ultraviolet light. This allowed life to move from water to land, a transition that was itself a daunting exam. Breathing air directly required lungs, circulatory systems, and entirely new body plans. Amphibians, reptiles, and eventually mammals each developed their own answers. Some succeeded, many failed. The test was merciless in its selectivity. The chemistry of the air has never been constant. Carbon dioxide has risen and fallen, shaping climates across deep time. When levels were high, Earth grew hot and forests spread across continents. When levels dropped, ice returned and seas withdrew. Every fluctuation posed challenges to plants, animals, and ecosystems. Those that could adjust in pace with the atmosphere survived. Those that could not were erased. Air is not just something to breathe. It is a force that alters the entire canvas of existence. For humans, air has always been both ally and examiner. Breath is our most constant act, yet it is also one of our most fragile. A few minutes without it, and survival is impossible. Ancient peoples knew this intuitively. They watched the winds, predicted storms, read the skies. Farmers depended on rains carried by monsoons and on breezes that spread seeds and cooled fields. Sailors built entire cultures around wind, learning its patterns, its tempers, and its moods. But air tests more than individuals. It tests civilizations. Consider droughts caused by shifts in wind and rainfall. In Mesopotamia, in the Indus Valley, and across the Americas, entire societies rose and fell depending on whether seasonal rains arrived. When winds failed, crops withered, cities declined. The examiners of air asked not only whether people could farm, but whether they could endure uncertainty. Storms have always been one of air's most visible examinations. Hurricanes, cyclones, and typhoons gather strength over oceans and strike with winds that topple forests and tear apart settlements. To pass these tests, species developed strategies: birds migrating before storms, trees flexing with the wind, humans building stronger shelters. Yet even the best preparations are sometimes not enough. The air's questions are not always survivable. At higher scales, the atmosphere delivers even larger trials. Ice ages, for instance, are not only the work of frozen landscapes, but also of shifting air currents and carbon levels. When volcanoes erupted, releasing sulfur and ash, the atmosphere cooled dramatically. Crops failed, populations dwindled. When greenhouse gases rose, warming followed. These cycles of air and chemistry shaped the trajectory of life across millions of years. Even the thinness of air has been a boundary. High mountains test lungs, forcing bodies to adapt or perish. Some human populations, like those in the Andes or Himalayas, developed unique adaptations to breathe where oxygen is scarce. These are subtle yet profound reminders that even the invisible composition of air can act as an examiner, deciding who can thrive and who cannot. Air also carries invisible threats. Diseases spread through droplets. Pollen drifts on breezes, testing immune systems. Dust storms travel thousands of miles, carrying with them particles that shape climates and health. Every breath contains not just oxygen, but a mixture of opportunities and dangers. The exam never ends. In our own time, the test of air has taken a new form. Pollution from industry, smoke from burning forests, and rising greenhouse gases alter the atmosphere at a pace far faster than natural cycles. The question is no longer only whether we can breathe, but whether we can keep the air habitable for generations to come. This is not a test set by nature alone, but by our own actions. It is a mirror placed before us, asking whether we can learn responsibility. Perhaps this is the deepest challenge of air. Unlike fire or ice, it is easy to forget. It is invisible, intangible, always present, yet this very invisibility makes it a more demanding examiner. It requires attention to what we cannot see, foresight for what has not yet arrived, care for what is often taken for granted. Passing the test of air means cultivating awareness. The atmosphere also connects us in ways we rarely consider. Every breath we take includes molecules exhaled by countless others: humans, animals, forests. The air over one continent drifts to another. Storms that rise in the tropics affect winters far away. The test is not local, but planetary. To live within air is to share a single system with all life. Passing the test is not only an individual matter, but a collective one. In seeing air as examiner, we glimpse the continuity of Earth's curriculum. Ice asked for patience, fire asked for resilience, water asked for flexibility, air asks for awareness and connection. Each test is layered on the others. Together they shape the arc of survival. Together they guide life forward through challenges that seem insurmountable yet always yield new beginnings. In the next part, we will step back and look not only at individual elements, but at the combination of them all. For Earth does not test with single questions alone. It tests with the interplay of ice, fire, water, and air, all woven together into cycles that challenge life in ways both subtle and overwhelming. It is within these combinations that some of the greatest trials of history have been set. When we look closely at Earth's examinations, we see they are never given one at a time. Ice does not wait for fire to finish. Water does not pause while air delivers its lessons. Instead, they overlap, combine, and compound, creating tests so complex that survival requires not just one answer, but many layered together. It is in these interwoven trials that the full character of Earth's testing ground is revealed. Take the end of the last ice age. It was not only glaciers melting, it was oceans rising, climates shifting, fire sparking as vegetation dried, winds changing their paths, and rains finding new homes. Entire regions transformed within a few generations. Mammoths, giant sloths, and saber-toothed cats could not keep pace with the convergence of pressures. Humans, however, found ways to adapt, some by following migrating herds, some by learning to fish swollen rivers, some by inventing agriculture to stabilize food supplies. The exam was not a single question, but a puzzle of moving parts. Passing it required creativity, cooperation, and a willingness to change. Consider to the eruption of Mount Tambora in 1815. A volcanic fire deep beneath the earth sent ash high into the atmosphere. Air carried the particles across continents. The sun dimmed, and temperatures dropped worldwide. Crops failed, rivers froze in summer, and famine followed. In this event we see fire, air, and ice working together, not as separate teachers, but as a single combined examiner. Those who endured did so through resilience and invention, sharing food, migrating, planting new crops that could withstand the cold. Once again, the test was not of strength alone, but of adaptability under conditions no one had seen before. These interwoven trials also reach further back into the deep past. Around 250 million years ago, during the end Permian extinction, nearly all life was erased. Gigantic volcanic eruptions released greenhouse gases, heating the planet to unbearable levels. Oceans warmed and turned toxic. Air grew heavy with carbon dioxide. Ice melted away, and deserts spread. In this compounded examination, almost every ecosystem failed. Yet a few small species found ways through, clinging to niches where survival was still possible. From those survivors, the later age of dinosaurs emerged. It was as if the test had cleared the slate, then allowed new students to enter the room. When we look at these layered events, we begin to see Earth not as a teacher of separate subjects, but as one that loves integration. The curriculum is never about one element alone. It is about combinations, about systems pressing on each other, about the unexpected ways a question can transform when fire meets air or when water meets ice. Life is examined not just in isolated skills, but in the capacity to handle complexity. Humans too are continually confronted with these integrated trials. Consider modern climate change. It is not only rising temperatures, it is shifting winds, stronger storms, melting glaciers, rising seas, and ecosystems under stress. Each element touches the others. Air traps heat, ice melts, water floods, fire spreads. The exam is not linear. It is holistic, testing not just survival, but foresight, cooperation, and stewardship. It is an open question whether we will pass. These interwoven trials remind us of the importance of perspective. To focus only on one element, say, on storms without considering rising seas, or on droughts without considering shifting winds, is to miss the shape of the examination. Earth never asks only one question. It asks many, all at once, sometimes quietly, sometimes loudly, sometimes with urgency that cannot be ignored. Perhaps this is what makes life's story so extraordinary. The tests are brutal, yet they also forge resilience. Every adaptation we see today, wings, gills, lungs, seeds, roots, shells, and senses, was born of multiple overlapping pressures. Life has been sculpted not by single forces, but by converging trials. The strength of survival lies not only in responding to one challenge, but in holding steady when many arrive together. Think of coral reefs. They must endure waves stirred by wind, changes in water temperature, shifts in chemistry, and storms that can level them in hours. Yet they persist, building slowly, adapting, creating one of the most vibrant ecosystems on Earth. Or consider forests that face fires, droughts, pests carried by air, and the shifting of seasons. Many trees have evolved thick bark, deep roots, and seeds that wait patiently for the right conditions. These are not answers to single questions, they are strategies for entire test suites. Human history too is full of examples where the greatest trials were combinations. The Black Death in the 14th century was not only disease, it was famine from failed harvests, stress from cooling climates, movement of people across trade routes, and the air carrying pathogens. Entire societies strained under the weight of multiple pressures. Yet from the suffering also came change, new forms of labor, shifts in culture, and scientific curiosity that would later give rise to new eras. If Earth is indeed a testing ground, then its most powerful method is synergy. Fire alone is dangerous, but fire with wind becomes catastrophe. Ice alone is harsh, but ice combined with low sunlight and shifting oceans becomes an epic. Water alone nourishes, but water combined with heat and storms becomes flood. Each element is an examiner in its own right, but together they create examinations that press to the very edge of endurance. This interplay also teaches something profound. No species, no society, no individual survives by mastering only one lesson. Passing Earth's tests requires breadth. It requires the ability to see connections, to notice how one change leads to another, how a question about air may also be a question about water, how a problem of fire may also become a problem of ice. It is in these links that the true challenge lies. Perhaps the deepest lesson of the interwoven trials is humility. Life is clever, but Earth's examinations are vast. Success is never guaranteed. Extinctions remind us of that. Yet within each challenge is also the possibility of growth. New species arise, new cultures emerge, new understandings develop. The tests are hard, but they are also generative. As we continue, let us look even closer at humanity itself. For if the planet tests all life, then humans face a unique kind of examination. Ours is not only physical, it is also mental, social, and ethical. The environment sets questions, but so too does memory, ambition, and choice. Earth may be a testing ground, but humans have turned the mirror inward, asking whether we ourselves are the greatest examiners of all. Up to this point, we have looked at how Earth examines all life through its shifting forces. Ice, fire, water, and air press upon plants and animals, shaping their survival. Yet humans stand in a curious position. We are still subject to those same examinations. We still face storms, droughts, earthquakes, and heat. But unlike most other creatures, we respond not only with bodies, but with ideas. Our resilience is not simply physical, it is cultural, technological, and imaginative. In this sense, humanity has entered a new classroom, one that requires not only adaptation, but reflection. Think of the agricultural revolution. For tens of thousands of years, humans were nomadic. They moved with herds, followed seasons, and endured the same examinations as every other species. Then something shifted. We began to plant seeds deliberately, to irrigate fields, to build permanent settlements. Where once we accepted the exam as given, now we began to prepare our own answers in advance. Fields could soften the test of famine. Stored grains could buffer against drought. Livestock could turn grass into food. The exam did not end, but humans learned to alter the conditions under which it was taken. Civilization itself can be seen as a response to Earth's questions. Cities rose near rivers, not by chance, but because water demanded cooperation. Irrigation channels required organization. Floods required defenses. Trade routes followed valleys and coasts, paths shaped by mountains and seas. Even political systems can be understood as tools for facing examinations together. A single farmer cannot withstand a 100-year flood, but a coordinated society can build levees, canals, and granaries. Cooperation became one of humanity's most powerful answers. But with each advance, new examinations emerged. Agriculture brought stability, yet it also brought soil exhaustion, deforestation, and vulnerability to crop failure. Cities fostered culture, yet they also concentrated disease. Writing preserved memory, yet it also carried the burden of bureaucracy and hierarchy. Every solution was itself another question. Perhaps this is Earth's quietest method. No answer is final. Each response only leads to a deeper layer of testing. The Industrial Revolution provides another example. Faced with the tests of energy and labor, humans discovered coal, oil, and machines. Suddenly, Rivers were no longer the only power source. Steam engines and factories multiplied. Production soared, populations grew, and life expectancy rose. Yet once again the exam expanded. Pollution darkened skies. Workers crowded into cities. Entire landscapes were reshaped. The burning of fossil fuels began to alter the very climate itself, setting a question far larger than any one generation could easily answer. What makes the human examination unique is its self-reflective nature. We are aware of being tested. When drought comes, we not only suffer, but also ask why. When disease spreads, we search for causes and cures. When storms devastate, we rebuild with stronger structures. Unlike most species, we are conscious of the curriculum. We write books about it. We tell stories of past floods, past plagues, past fires, hoping to pass the lessons forward. In this way, memory itself becomes part of the examination. Forgetting can mean failing. Remembering can mean survival. Art, too, plays a role. Cave paintings of animals were not only decoration, but reminders of hunts, of migrations, of patterns in the world. Songs carried knowledge of seasons. Myths preserved warnings of floods or eruptions. Even when details blurred, the essence of survival was carried in culture. To be human is to turn examinations into narratives, to transform danger into story, and in story to find resilience. There is also a moral dimension. Other species adapt or perish, but humans face ethical questions layered into the exams. When famine strikes, do we hoard or share? When disease spreads, do we care for the sick or abandon them? When resources dwindle, do we fight or cooperate? Earth provides the conditions, but the choices are ours. Passing the exam is not only about survival, but about what kind of survival we choose. Consider the Dust Bowl of the 1930s in North America. Drought alone was not the cause. Years of overplowing had left soil vulnerable. When the rains failed, winds carried the topsoil away, creating vast storms of dust. Families fled, towns collapsed, and hunger spread. The examination was not only environmental, it was human. How to respond to mistakes, how to learn from excess, how to build new practices of conservation. Out of that trial came soil restoration programs, new farming techniques, and a deeper awareness of how human action amplifies or mitigates Earth's tests. Our technologies continue to expand, and with them the exams grow subtler. Satellites circle overhead, measuring storms, mapping forests, watching glaciers melt. Vaccines and antibiotics defend against diseases that once decimated populations. Yet new challenges arrive: superbugs resistant to drugs, plastics filling oceans, warming climates reshaping coastlines. Each innovation both solves and creates problems. Each success adds to the syllabus of the next test. Some might wonder whether this endless cycle has a destination. If Earth is a testing ground, what is it testing for? Strength, wisdom, cooperation. Perhaps the answer lies not in a single goal, but in the process itself. The exams shape life into what it becomes. Without them, there would be no wings, no cities, no poems, no telescopes. The tests themselves are the sculptors. Humanity is not outside of them, but a continuation of the same long pattern, written now with self-awareness and memory. Some vanish quickly, unable to answer the questions of drought or invasion. Others persist for centuries, building temples, languages, and systems of trade. A few reach across oceans, linking continents. And we, here now, find ourselves in the present version of the test. Climate change, biodiversity loss, shifting resources, and the demand for cooperation across billions of people, the exam is immense. Whether we pass or fail may depend less on our machines than on our willingness to remember the deeper lessons of adaptation and humility. In this way, Earth is not only a stage, but also a teacher. Every earthquake, every storm, every drought or flood is a question written into the curriculum. We may not like the questions. We may feel they are unfair, too harsh, too frequent. Yet they are the conditions that shape us. The very fact that we are here to ask about them is proof that countless generations of humans and countless species before us have endured, adapted, and passed. Perhaps then the true test for humanity is not whether we can control Earth, but whether we can live wisely within it, to recognize patterns, to respect limits, to use knowledge not only for power, but for balance. The exams are ongoing. The bell has not rung. The paper is still on the desk, and the questions are still being asked. Every generation inherits not only the land, the air, and the waters of Earth, but also the ongoing examinations woven into them. The tests are never fully behind us. They repeat in patterns, though never in exactly the same form. Today, humanity faces a convergence of questions that echo ancient ones. In floods and fires, in plagues and storms, we hear reminders of challenges endured by past civilizations. Yet there is something different now. The scale is global. The examination is no longer regional or local. It is planetary. One of the clearest questions comes in the form of climate. We know from ice cores drilled deep in Antarctica and Greenland that Earth's climate has always shifted. Ice ages came and went. Warm periods melted glaciers, raised seas, and transformed forests into deserts. Life survived by moving, by adapting, by evolving new traits. But the current shift is accelerated by human action. Our burning of coal, oil, and gas has released billions of tons of carbon dioxide, thickening the blanket of gases in the atmosphere. Temperatures rise. Oceans absorb the excess heat and swell. Storms strengthen. Glaciers retreat. The test is ancient, but the pace is new. The question is whether we can slow what we have set in motion. Another pressing examination is biodiversity. The fossil record shows that extinctions are common. 5 major ones have already scarred Earth's history. Each time, life rebuilt itself, but only after millions of years. Today, species vanish at a rate far faster than background levels. Forests fall, coral reefs bleach, pollinators decline. This is not only a question for nature, but also for ourselves. Our food, our medicines, our very air depend on ecosystems. To lose them is to weaken our own answers to Earth's test. Pandemics remind us of yet another question. For centuries, disease has swept across continents, testing human resilience. The plague, influenza, smallpox, cholera all carried their lessons. Modern medicine allows us to resist in ways our ancestors could not. Yet microbes continue to evolve, slipping past our defenses. The COVID-19 pandemic showed how quickly a virus can spread across a connected world, disrupting economies, societies, and daily life. It was a reminder that the exam is not only physical, but also social. How we cooperate, how we share resources, how we protect the vulnerable, all become part of the answer sheet. Resource scarcity provides a further challenge. Water tables drop, fisheries collapse, soil thins. Minerals needed for our technologies become harder to find. Each scarcity forces choices. Do we compete or share? Do we innovate or exhaust? Ancient civilizations faced similar questions. The Mayans endured drought. The Akkadians saw rivers dry. The ancestral Pueblones left cliff dwellings as water failed. Today, the questions echo, but the stakes are higher. Billions of people depend on resources once managed by small communities. The test has scaled upward. Perhaps the most subtle examination is one of memory and humility. Earth has tested life for billions of years. Many species failed. Many civilizations collapsed. Yet humans are often tempted to think we are outside the pattern. We build skyscrapers and satellites, imagining permanence. But the ruins of Rome, the silent pyramids, the abandoned temples in jungles remind us otherwise. The exam is still underway. Forgetting past lessons is itself a kind of failure. Remembering and acting on memory may be the key to survival. The interwoven nature of these trials makes them more daunting. Climate change intensifies storms, which flood cities, which spread disease, which disrupt economies. Drought fuels wildfires, which release carbon, which warms the air, which worsens drought. Feedback loops turn one question into many. The test is not multiple choice. It is open-ended, complex, and cumulative, yet in this difficulty lies possibility. Humans are not powerless students scribbling in panic. We are also learners who can collaborate, innovate, and anticipate. Renewable energy, conservation efforts, reforestation, global cooperation, these are not perfect answers, but they are attempts at response. Just as early farmers shaped fields, just as ancient builders raised levees, we now attempt to craft solutions scaled to a planet. There is another dimension as well, the inner examination. Earth's tests do not only measure physical survival, they also press upon values. Do we treat the planet as disposable or as sacred? Do we prioritize short-term gain or long-term balance? Do we see ourselves as separate from nature or as part of it? These are not questions of geology or biology alone. They are ethical questions, written into the storms and the seasons. In facing them, we may glimpse the larger purpose. Perhaps Earth is not testing us for some external evaluator. Perhaps the exam itself is the point. To be tested is to grow. To face questions is to learn. The meaning lies not in a final grade, but in the process of becoming more resilient, more aware, more compassionate. Just as fire refines metal, Earth's examinations refine life. And yet, the outcome is not predetermined. Extinction is possible. Collapse is possible. The fossil record testifies to that, but renewal is also possible. Adaptation is possible. Cooperation is possible. Earth's history holds both failure and triumph. The question now is where humanity will fall within that pattern. In this moment, as storms intensify and seas rise, as forests vanish and diseases spread, we are seated once more in the vast classroom. The exam papers are in front of us. The questions are written in clouds, in tides, in winds, in soil. Some answers we already know, others we must invent. All are urgent. And the time, though not yet gone, is not infinite. Passing the current examination will require something beyond technology. It will require humility to learn from nature. It will require cooperation across borders. It will require imagination to see futures different from the past. These are difficult lessons, but they are also within reach. After all, we are here because generations before us passed their own trials. We carry their resilience, their memory, their ingenuity. The possibility of passing is not only real, it is our inheritance. And so we continue, moving toward the final reflections. For if Earth is a test, and if we are among its latest examinees, then the last question is this: what kind of students do we wish to be? What legacy will we leave behind, written into the rocks, the air, the water, and the memory of life? Every examination has an end, though sometimes it arrives quietly rather than with a bell. As we reach the final part of this long reflection, it is worth pausing to ask what Earth's testing ground might ultimately mean. Not only for humanity, not only for the creatures alive today, but for life itself across the span of time. For billions of years, Earth has been running its examinations. Microbes in ancient seas were tested by heat and pressure. Plants reaching for the sky were tested by drought and flood. Animals crawling onto land were tested by gravity and air. Dinosaurs were tested by fire and impact. Mammals were tested by ice and scarcity. In every age, questions were posed, and life either found answers or faded from the page. The human chapter is part of this same continuum. We are not separate from the tests. We are the latest participants, seated among the countless generations that came before. Yet we bring something unusual. We are aware of the exam. We not only answer, but reflect upon the questions. We debate them, write about them, record them, and teach them to one another. That awareness is itself a kind of answer. The final question may not be about survival alone. It may be about meaning. Earth does not grade with letters or scores. It marks with continuity. A species survives, and its story goes on. A species fails, and the record moves forward without it. The true measure, then, is not perfection, but persistence. To pass is to continue, to fail is to vanish, but within that persistence lies room for choice. Humans do not merely endure storms, fires, and droughts. We decide how to endure them. We build cities or abandon them. We share resources or hoard them. We protect forests or fell them. Each choice becomes part of our answer sheet. Each decision, small or large, shapes the outcome of the examination. Perhaps the deepest question is whether we can move beyond seeing ourselves as test takers alone. We are also test givers, especially now. The choices we make set examinations for other species. Our burning of fossil fuels raises seas that challenge coastal animals. Our deforestation poses questions for birds and insects. Our plastic waste sets obstacles for marine life. Earth is not only testing us, we are shaping the exams for others. That awareness carries responsibility. This responsibility may be the hidden curriculum. To be tested is one thing. To know you are shaping tests for others is another. It asks us to consider not just survival, but stewardship. Are we creating an exam so harsh that most species will fail? Or can we adjust our choices to allow others to endure as well? In this sense, passing may mean not only continuing our own story, but ensuring that countless other stories also have a chance to unfold. The planet itself will persist. Mountains will rise and crumble. Oceans will open and close. The air will thicken and thin. Continents will drift. Whether humanity remains or not, Earth will continue its examinations with whatever life survives. This recognition can be humbling. It can also be freeing. Our task is not to master the planet, but to participate well in its ongoing cycle. When seen in this light, Earth is not hostile. Its tests are not punishments, they are conditions for growth. Ice teaches patience. Fire teaches resilience. Water teaches adaptability. Air teaches movement and balance. Interwoven trials teach complexity. Human society adds reflection, memory, and choice. The exam is vast, but it is also beautiful. Each challenge has carved life into what it is. Without the tests, there would be no wings, no forests, no minds able to wonder about the stars. So what if Earth is a test? Then it is a test we were born into, shaped by, and carried through. It is not something to be beaten, but something to be engaged with. Its questions are difficult, but they are also the reason we are here at all. In every storm and every calm, every flood and every harvest, every fire and every rebirth, the examination continues. And perhaps that is the quiet truth. There is no final exam, only a continuation of questions, generation after generation, species after species. The meaning lies not in a single answer, but in the ongoing effort to respond, to adapt, to care. Passing is not a destination, it is a practice, lived daily, written into choices, remembered in stories, and carried into futures we cannot yet see. So as you drift toward rest, let yourself feel the weight and wonder of this long curriculum. You are part of a lineage billions of years deep. You are both student and teacher. You carry the memory of trials endured and the responsibility of trials yet to come. The test is not something to fear, but something to honor. It has shaped the mountains, the rivers, the forests, the skies. It has shaped you. Thank you for sharing this long reflection. May it bring calm to your thoughts and curiosity to your dreams. If you found this journey meaningful, I invite you gently to like this video, to subscribe for more, and to share your thoughts in the comments. Each interaction helps this little signal find others who might also take comfort in wonder. Until next time, good night, and may your rest be deep.